Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a really interesting story today. The global electric vehicle race and how Germany, a real powerhouse in automotive engineering, found themselves kind of struggling to keep up with China's EV revolution. It's pretty fascinating, especially because both countries initially aimed for electric vehicles around the same time, like way back in 2009.
Yeah, that's right around 2009.
So why did their paths end up being so different?
Well, I think Germany's early focus on that clean diesel technology played a big role. Starting in the 90s, they were all about this idea as a way to make cars less polluting.
Right. It seemed like a pretty good strategy at first, didn't it?
It did.
I mean, they were really successful in Europe.
Yeah.
Even got approval and subsidies from the US for a while. They were almost ahead of the curve on the whole reducing emissions thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But that early success with combustion engines, even cleaner ones, kind of ended up holding them back when it came to electric vehicles.
Oh, interesting. So how did that happen?
Well, think about it this way. Resources and research all went into perfecting those diesel engines. So there wasn't as much attention or investment going into electric powertrains.
Ah, so they kind of got stuck in their ways.
Yeah, exactly. You could say they were locked into that technology.
Yeah.
And the numbers really tell the story. By 2013, there were only about 7,000 electric vehicles registered in Germany.
Wow, that's not many at all.
No, not at all. Especially when you compare that to China, which was already aiming to produce like 500,000 electric vehicles. The difference in ambition is pretty clear.
Yeah, that's a massive gap. But then, of course, things changed pretty drastically, right?
They did.
With the whole Dieselgate scandal in 2015.
Ah, yes, Dieselgate. That really changed things. It exposed the clean diesel idea for what it really was. It turned out that some German automakers were cheating on those emissions tests. The whole image of their clean technology just shattered.
It was a huge blow to their reputation, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It had a global impact. Millions of vehicles were involved. And the fines, billions of euros.
Yeah. It was a major turning point for sure.
Yeah, for sure. They had to shift gears fast and speed up their electric vehicle development. But the damage was done. They were behind playing catch-up.
So they're behind, gotta make up ground quickly.
Yeah.
What was the biggest thing holding them back in this electric vehicle push?
Battery technology, no question. It was like the key to the whole EV race. And by 2016, every single one of the top 10 battery manufacturers in the world was an Asian company.
Really? No European companies in the top 10?
Nope, not one. Which meant European automakers, including those in Germany, had to rely on Asian suppliers for this crucial component.
So they were kind of dependent on their competition.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about getting the batteries, it was about the cost and control.
I see. So European automakers were basically paying their Asian competitors by buying their batteries.
Yeah, pretty much. The president of the European Automobile Manufacturers Association even said something about it, how thousands of euros per vehicle were going straight to Chinese battery makers.
So they must have tried to make their own batteries, right?
They did. Companies like Bosch and Continental from Germany tried to get into the battery production game. Well, they were up against a tough challenge. Those Asian companies, giants like CATL, BYD, LG Chem, they were already years ahead, way ahead in terms of development, scale, expertise.
So even with all their engineering know-how, German companies couldn't catch up quickly enough.
That's right. And it went beyond just making the batteries.
Oh,
It was about controlling the raw materials, too.
things like lithium.
You got it. The essential ingredient in most EV batteries.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Right. Well, the West was still debating whether electric vehicles were the way to go. China was out there securing access to these crucial resources. They were buying up lithium mines like crazy in Australia, South America, all over the place.
Wow, that's thinking ahead.
Exactly.
They were playing the long game.
So China had the batteries, the infrastructure, and the raw materials. What did German automakers do?
They had to adapt.
So what did they do?
They had to look east.
You mean towards China, the competitor they were trying to beat. Exactly. They started to see China as a potential partner.
Wow. So after trying to do it all themselves, they decided to team up.
It was a smart move. They realized that working with Chinese companies was the best way to get the technology, the supply chains, and the knowledge they needed to stay in the game. Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen especially. They all started setting up production in China, taking advantage of what was already there.
That's a huge shift in the car industry globally.
It is, but it doesn't stop there.
Right, because the future of getting around isn't just about electric vehicles. What about self-driving cars? All that autonomous driving technology.
Yeah, right. That's the next big thing.
Yeah.
And you know what? China's leading the way again. They're making huge progress in things like vehicle-to-everything communication, or V2X.
V2X, I'm not really familiar with that. What is it?
So imagine cars that can talk not only to each other, but also to things like traffic lights and road signs.
Oh, wow.
That's what V2X is all about. It's a game changer for self-driving cars. Makes traffic flow so much safer and more efficient.
So China's pushing the boundaries there. Can German automakers catch up with this new tech wave? Or will they get left behind?
That's a question we'll dig into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll look at the challenges and the opportunities for German automakers as they navigate this new era of mobility.
All right, sounds good. We'll be right back to unpack this fascinating story a little more.
You know, there's another area where China really kind of outmaneuvered Germany in this whole EV race.
Okay, tell me more. I'm curious.
Charging infrastructure. See, they realized early on that people wouldn't switch to electric cars if there weren't enough places to charge them. It's a basic idea, but it's super important.
Right, totally, because what's the point of having an electric car if you can't find a place to plug it in?
Exactly, and China was way ahead on this. By 2015, they already had more public charging stations than the entire US. They went all in on this.
Wow, that's impressive. So they weren't just building the cars, they were building the whole system to support them.
Exactly. And meanwhile, Germany's rollout of charging stations was much slower. And that created a problem for people thinking about buying electric cars. They were hesitant, without enough places to charge.
Yeah, it's like a chicken and egg thing, isn't it? People won't buy electric cars without enough charging stations, but companies won't invest in charging stations if there aren't enough electric cars on the road.
You got it. And China figured out how to break that cycle. They realized the government had to step in to get things moving.
You mean like those subsidies we talked about before, the ones that made electric cars cheaper?
Yeah, but it was more than that. They did all sorts of things to encourage people to buy electric cars. Tax breaks, free parking, even letting them drive in places where regular cars weren't allowed. They made it really appealing.
So they created all these advantages for EV owners. That's pretty different from how Germany approached it at first. Do you think maybe because they were so successful with regular cars for so long, they were hesitant to change?
Maybe. There might have been some resistance to giving up what they knew, even though things were clearly changing, and that cost them valuable time.
Okay, so we've got China ahead on batteries, charging infrastructure, and government support. Was there anything else?
Oh yeah, they were also much faster at embracing all those digital technologies and software. They realized early on that the future of cars wasn't just about the hardware. It was about all the software, data, and connectivity, creating a smarter driving experience.
So all this stuff that powers things like the entertainment system, the navigation, and even self-driving features.
Exactly. And China was really good at fostering a tech environment where these things could develop quickly. They were way more agile and adaptable than a lot of those traditional German car companies.
Right, it's like they understood that cars were becoming more like smartphones on wheels.
Exactly, and they took advantage of that. They brought in the best software engineers and AI experts. They created a space where innovation could flourish.
While German automakers, with their focus on mechanics, were slower to catch on.
Yeah, they had some catching up to do in that area. And that's always tough.
Okay, so China was ahead on batteries, charging, government support, and software. Did German car companies just give up at that point?
Not really, but they knew they needed a new strategy. They couldn't beat China at their own game, so they had to find a different way to compete.
Which takes us back to working together, right? Collaborating with those Chinese companies instead of trying to outdo them.
Exactly. They realized that partnering up was the smartest move. It gave them access to all that cutting-edge technology and those efficient supply chains they needed to stay relevant.
Yeah, it must have been a tough pill to swallow for some of those German car companies. They're known for their engineering and being innovative.
Probably. But it also shows they can adapt to a changing world. And this shift toward collaboration really makes you think about what innovation really means.
Yeah, it does. What do you mean? It really makes you think about how companies innovate, especially in a global market. Like, is it better to try and do everything yourself or be open to working with others, even your competitors?
It's a tough question. There are good arguments on both sides.
Right, for sure.
I mean, some people say that working with Chinese companies could actually hurt German expertise over time.
Yeah.
Like they might become too reliant on another country for important technology.
Yeah, I can see that, especially with all the geopolitical stuff going on these days.
Exactly. There's a real concern that China could end up having too much power if other countries depend on them too much for this kind of technology.
So Germany needs to stay competitive in the electric car market, but they also have to protect their own interests. It's a tricky situation.
It is. There's no easy answer. Every company, every country has to figure out their own way to handle this.
And it's not just Germany and China, right? This whole shift to electric cars is impacting everyone.
Oh yeah, it's a global thing.
Yeah.
It's changing the whole car industry. The US, Japan, South Korea, they're all dealing with the same challenges and opportunities.
And it's not just the big old companies either.
Right? You've got all these new companies coming in, shaking things up. Like
Yeah.
Tesla? But there are tons of others popping up all over the world.
It's a pretty exciting time for the car industry. It feels like anything could happen.
It really does.
Oh.
All the old rules are changing. It's hard to say who's going to come out on top.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? I think it means that the way we think about transportation is changing. The cars we drive, how we power them, who even makes them, it's all changing really fast.
It brings up a lot of big questions, too, about the environment and where we get our energy, and even global politics. The decisions we make today about all this stuff will have a huge impact on the future.
So next time you're driving, think about all these things that are happening in the world of cars.
Think about what it all means. This is just the beginning of the electric car story.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us as we explored this incredible shift in the global car industry. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the forces shaping our world. Until then, keep your eyes on the road and your minds open to the possibilities.